Every day, millions of aging parents across America are quietly being erased from the center of their children's lives, not with anger, not with conflict, but with quiet indifference. At first, it feels harmless. A missed phone call, a shorter visit, a delayed response. But slowly, silently, something shifts, and you begin to wonder when exactly you became a background character in the lives you once held together. The most dangerous part? This emotional distancing doesn't happen all at once. It creeps in, day by day, moment by moment, until one day you're no longer a priority, just an afterthought. And if you're watching this right now, there's a real chance you've felt it too. The silence, the dismissive tone, the unspoken message that you are no longer essential, just convenient, or worse, a burden. But here's the truth they won't say, and maybe haven't even realized themselves. You don't need to cry. You don't need to argue. You don't need to beg for respect, because there is a better way, a smarter, quieter, and far more powerful way to respond. In this video, you'll discover how to stop chasing their attention and start reclaiming your self-worth, not through confrontation, but through quiet transformation. And near the end, I'll share one truth most adult children will never admit, but every aging parent needs to hear. So before you get distracted or click away, give yourself this moment, because what you're about to hear might just change the way you see yourself forever. They don't see you anymore. The silence between phone calls has grown longer. You've noticed it, the gradual extension of days into weeks, sometimes stretching into months. Each passing day adds weight to a question you never imagined you'd have to ask. When did you become invisible to your own children? It wasn't sudden. There was no clear moment when everything changed. Instead, it happened in almost imperceptible shifts, like watching a clock so closely that you don't notice the hour hand moving, until suddenly, the entire day has passed. You gave them everything. Your time, your energy, your best years, the countless nights you stayed awake, heart pounding with worry when they had fevers, the career opportunities you quietly declined because they would have meant less time at home, the vacations postponed, the personal dreams deferred, the 1,000 small sacrifices that accumulated day after day, year after year, forming the invisible foundation upon which they built their lives. But now, when they finally arrive for those increasingly rare visits, something has changed in the atmosphere between you. There's a subtle tension in their shoulders, a glance at watches or phones that comes too frequently, responses that feel rehearsed rather than genuine. They rush through conversations as if working through a checklist. Yes, I'm eating well. Yes, work is fine. No, nothing new to report. They arrive with one foot already pointed toward the door. What once was a homecoming now feels like a courtesy call, the kind made out of obligation rather than desire. Their sighs when you ask questions have become more audible. Their patience thins when you share stories they've heard before. Though you remember a time when they asked for the same bedtime story night after night, and you told it with the same enthusiasm each time. When you offer advice, drawn from decades of hard-won experience, you see that look cross their face, that subtle mixture of dismissal and restraint, as if they're holding back from saying what they really think, that your wisdom has expired, rendered obsolete by the rapid pace of modern life. This quiet pain you're experiencing isn't an anomaly or personal failure. Across thousands of homes throughout America, parents sit in living rooms designed for family gatherings that rarely happen anymore. They maintain traditions that fewer people show up to honor each year. They keep guest rooms ready, refrigerators stocked with favorite foods, photo albums updated, all for visits that grow shorter and less frequent. They plan their days, their weeks, sometimes even their years around the possibility of brief encounters with children who have recategorized them from essential to occasional. The evolution from being central to peripheral in their lives happened so gradually that you almost didn't notice until it was complete. Remember when every achievement, every disappointment, every significant moment in their lives prompted an immediate call to you? Now you learn about promotions through social media posts, about relationships through group messages, about major life decisions after they've already been made. The shift is unmistakable. You've moved from being essential to being tolerated, from being respected to being managed, from being loved unconditionally to being fitted into scheduled blocks of time, from being a parent to being an obligation, a box to check, an item on a to-do list that gets pushed to next weekend with increasing frequency. You've become the person whose calls they screen, whose texts they respond to hours later, whose invitations require checking their calendar, even though you've seen them spontaneously make plans with friends while sitting at your dinner table. The most painful truth isn't that they're busy. Everyone is busy. It's that in the hierarchy of their busyness, you've been silently demoted. You've become the comma in their lives, rather than the period that once brought their sentences home. If this reality feels painfully familiar, know that you aren't alone in this experience. This peculiar form of emotional abandonment has become the unspoken epidemic affecting an entire generation of parents. Society celebrates the independence of adult children, the successful launch into their own lives, but remains largely silent about what happens to those left standing on the metaphorical launch pad, waving at rockets that no longer look back. There's no guidebook for this transition, no support group that meets on Wednesdays to discuss becoming peripheral in the lives you once centered your world around. The truth that few acknowledge openly is that they don't truly see you anymore. Not as the multidimensional person who shaped their worldview, taught them to distinguish right from wrong, showed them how to tie shoelaces, and later, how to navigate heartbreak. Not as someone whose time, feelings, and presence hold equal value to their own. This revelation, this recognition of your changed position in their lives, feels at first like a devastating conclusion, a sad ending to decades of devotion. But what if this painful reality isn't the end of your story? What if this moment of clarity, however painful, could become the unexpected catalyst for something powerful? What if the space created by their absence could be filled with something more meaningful than waiting by phones that don't ring? What if this isn't your ending at all, but rather an unexpected beginning? Because while they may have stopped seeing you, perhaps the more important question is, when did you stop seeing yourself? Modern distance, the new form of disrespect. There's a particular phrase that has become the universal password of modern family dynamics, a simple combination of words that somehow unlocks immediate absolution from responsibility. I've just been busy. These 5 words have transformed into the most socially acceptable form of dismissal in our culture today. They require no further explanation, no specific details, no accountability. They simultaneously communicate priority while offering immunity from questioning. After all, who among us isn't busy? Who would dare challenge the sacred status of someone's packed schedule? This simple phrase has become the perfect shield, deflecting any potential accusation of neglect while establishing a hierarchy of importance that leaves you firmly at the bottom. What makes this excuse particularly painful is its transparent inconsistency. The same children who cannot find 30 minutes for a proper phone conversation somehow manage to document elaborate weekend getaways on social media. The ones who are too exhausted to visit have energy for midnight movie premieres with friends. The busy schedules that prevent them from attending family gatherings still accommodate binge-watching entire seasons of shows within days of their release. The unavoidable work commitments that make holidays complicated don't seem to interfere with spontaneous trips when more attractive opportunities arise. They have time to redecorate apartments, cultivate hobbies, maintain active social lives, and spend countless hours scrolling through their phones. Hours that accumulate into days, weeks, and months of time that could have included you. This isn't merely about their absence, it's about the fundamental disrespect that underlies this new emotional distance. Consider how family decisions are now handled. Remember when your input was not just valued, but actively sought? When major life choices weren't made without your perspective? Now you learn about cross-country moves after apartment leases are signed. You discover career changes through casual mentions at holiday gatherings. You hear about medical procedures after they've been completed. You're informed about grandchildren's names rather than consulted about family traditions. The message is clear. Your decades of wisdom, your intimate knowledge of family history, your hard-earned life experience, all have been silently deemed irrelevant in the context of their autonomous adult lives. Your role has shifted from trusted advisor to belated recipient of information, as if your sole remaining function is to acknowledge decisions rather than influence them. Perhaps even more telling than what they say is how they say it. The growing impatience in their tone cannot be missed. The quick corrections when you misspeak or misremember a detail, delivered with an edge that would never be acceptable in professional settings. The interrupted stories cut short with, "Yes, Mom, you've told me this before," though they've repeated their own tales countless times to others without interruption. The audible sighs when you take an extra moment to find the right word or collect your thoughts. The almost imperceptible eye-rolling when you express an opinion that doesn't align with current thinking. These microaggressions accumulate, creating a pattern of disrespect that would be immediately recognized and condemned if directed toward anyone else in their lives. Then there's that subtle shift in their tone of voice, that slightly louder, slightly slower cadence they adopt when explaining things to you. It's the same voice they use with very young children or someone they believe cannot fully comprehend complex information. It's patronizing in its gentleness, insulting in its simplicity. "The phone works like this, Dad." "No, that's not how streaming services operate. Let me explain how online banking actually works." Each explanation carries the unspoken assumption that you cannot possibly understand the modern world they navigate with such confidence, as if your intelligence has an expiration date that has long passed. They've forgotten that you mastered new technologies throughout your entire life, adapted to cultural shifts they cannot imagine, and solved problems of far greater complexity than setting up a password manager. They're adults now, but they forget who made adulthood possible. This truth resonates deeply because it highlights the fundamental disconnect in their thinking. They stand confidently in their independence without recognizing the foundation that supports it. They've forgotten the parent who taught them resilience by modeling it daily through personal struggles they never burdened you with. They've forgotten the parent who fostered their independence while silently processing the grief that came with each step toward separation. The first day of school, the first solo drive, the first apartment. They've forgotten the parent who celebrated their growth and encouraged their dreams, knowing that success might take them physically and emotionally further away. They've forgotten the years you spent teaching them to function without you, even as your heart ached at the growing distance. Now they exercise that independence as if it were solely their creation, rather than the culmination of your greatest success as a parent. This modern distance isn't merely physical separation, it's a fundamental reclassification of your value in their lives. You've been silently downgraded from essential to optional, from priority to contingency, from irreplaceable to interchangeable. This isn't about busy schedules or geographic distance. These are merely convenient explanations for a deeper emotional withdrawal. People make time for what they value. They overcome obstacles to reach what matters most. They find ways to nurture connections they consider essential. The painful truth is not that they lack time. It's that they've recategorized you in the hierarchy of what deserves their time. And this subtle demotion, this quiet reclassification, represents the most profound form of disrespect. One that often goes unacknowledged because it's wrapped in the socially acceptable package of adult independence. Don't react, don't beg, don't try to fix it. When confronted with the painful reality of being sidelined by your adult children, your instinctive response might be entirely emotional. You might want to call them out directly, itemize every sacrifice you've made, remind them of all you've given, and demand the recognition and respect you rightfully deserve. You might feel the urge to send that long, heartfelt message detailing your disappointment, or initiate that difficult conversation where you finally express the hurt that's been accumulating for months or years. This reaction is natural. It's human to want acknowledgement of pain, especially when it comes from those we've devoted our lives to nurturing. Don't do it. Emotional confrontations, no matter how justified, rarely produce the changes you hope for. They might generate temporary guilt, a brief period of increased attention, perhaps even tearful apologies and promises to do better. But guilt is a poor foundation for genuine connection, and shame-based behavior changes seldom last. More critically, these emotional appeals often backfire in ways you don't anticipate. They reinforce a perception of you as needy, difficult, or emotionally demanding. They create uncomfortable associations with your presence or calls. They provide confirmation of their unspoken belief that maintaining distance is easier than navigating your emotional needs. The temporary improvement in attention that follows is not authentic reconnection. It's obligation-driven behavior that will dissipate once the guilt fades. Similarly, begging for attention, through frequent calls, desperate attempts to insert yourself into their lives, or trying to make yourself continually useful to them, only diminishes your dignity and reinforces unhealthy dynamics. When you repeatedly reach out after being ignored, you unintentionally send a message that your time and emotional well-being are less valuable than theirs. When you rearrange your schedule at a moment's notice to accommodate their sudden availability, you communicate that your life lacks importance outside your relationship with them. When you accept last-minute cancellations without consequence, you teach them that commitments to you are optional. Each time you chase their attention, you inadvertently strengthen their perception that you need them more than they need you, creating a fundamental imbalance that further erodes respect. There's a harsh truth we must confront. Who needs to be reminded of your value has already forgotten it. No amount of evidence, no list of sacrifices, no recounting of your parental resume will restore what has been willfully overlooked. The recognition you seek cannot be demanded or negotiated. It must be freely given to have any meaning. And paradoxically, the more you pursue this acknowledgement, the further it recedes from possibility. Your worth as a person, separate from your role as a parent, is inherent and unchangeable. It requires no external validation, especially not from those who have demonstrated an inability to recognize it consistently. Instead of these reactive approaches that ultimately diminish your self-respect, embrace the power of dignity and distance. This means accepting the current reality without bitterness, while simultaneously refusing to participate in relationships that lack mutuality and respect. It means releasing the expectation that things should be different while holding firm to standards of how you deserve to be treated. It means recognizing that while you cannot control their behavior, you maintain complete authority over your response to it. This quiet strength comes not from chasing their approval or attention, but from reclaiming your inherent worth independent of their recognition. In practical terms, this means implementing clear changes. Stop organizing your day around potential calls that consistently don't come. Remove yourself from the waiting pattern that has you perpetually available in case they might have time for you. Stop keeping weekends perpetually open for visits that are frequently canceled or rescheduled. Stop dropping everything when they suddenly have a brief window of availability after weeks of silence. Stop serving as the emergency backup when their preferred plans fall through. These patterns keep you perpetually in a secondary position, reinforcing the notion that your time holds less value than theirs. The counterintuitive truth is this: the less you chase their attention, the more they'll question their distance. The less you need their validation, the more they'll wonder why you're suddenly standing taller without it. The less you accommodate their inconsistent presence in your life, the more they'll recognize the consequences of their absence. This isn't manipulation or game playing. It's the natural result of restoring balance to relationships that have become fundamentally uneven. It's about creating the psychological space for them to experience the natural consequences of their choices, rather than protecting them from these realities through your constant accommodation. To be absolutely clear, this approach isn't about punishment, revenge, or teaching harsh lessons. It's about reclaiming your dignity and remembering a fundamental truth that somewhere along the way became obscured. Before you were their parent, you were a complete person, and you still are. Your value doesn't begin and end with your parental role. Your time isn't less precious because your children are grown. Your needs for respect, consideration, and reciprocity in relationships don't diminish with age. By maintaining these boundaries, you're not just changing how they see you, you're changing how you see yourself. And ultimately, that transformation matters far more than any recognition they might eventually offer. Become the person they never expected. Now begins your genuine transformation. This isn't about creating an illusion of happiness to make them regret their distance. It's about rediscovering the complete person who existed before parenthood consumed your identity. The parent role, while profoundly important, was always just one dimension of who you are. It's time to expand beyond that singular definition and reclaim the fullness of your existence. Start with your physical well-being. Your body carried you through decades of parenting. The sleepless nights, the constant vigilance, the physical demands of raising children. Now it deserves your focused attention. This isn't just about medical checkups and medications, it's about movement that brings you joy, nutrition that energizes you, and rest that truly restores. Your health isn't merely the absence of illness, it's the presence of vitality that allows you to fully engage with life. Simultaneously, rediscover passions that parenthood forced you to set aside, the creative pursuits abandoned when diapers and homework took priority, the intellectual interests sacrificed to soccer practices and dance recitals, the travel dreams deferred for college tuitions. These weren't simply hobbies. They were essential expressions of your unique personhood that got muted while you amplified your children's developing identities. Reclaiming these interests isn't selfish, it's necessary restoration of your complete self. As you rebuild this independent life, remember this truth. You're not here to be tolerated between your children's more important commitments. You're not here to be managed like an obligation. You're here to be respected, even if it's from a distance. And the foundation of earning that respect begins with respecting yourself enough to create a life of meaning beyond their intermittent attention. One day, they'll look back. One day, it will happen. Perhaps when they're facing midlife challenges of their own. Perhaps when their children begin showing the same patterns of distance. Perhaps when mortality becomes more than an abstract concept. A moment of clarity will arrive unbidden, bringing with it the weight of retrospection and missed opportunities. They'll remember the calls they consistently didn't make, the wisdom they dismissed with casual confidence, the family gatherings they attended physically while remaining emotionally absent, the questions about your life they never thought to ask, the stories of your past they never made time to hear, the holidays they shortened, the birthdays they missed, the milestones they acknowledged with hasty texts rather than presence. In that moment, regret will visit them with its characteristic sting of finality. The painful, "I should have," thoughts will surface, carrying the particular anguish that comes from recognizing a mistake only after the opportunity for correction has passed. They'll understand, too late, the irreplaceable value of time that can never be recovered. They'll recognize the arrogance in believing that meaningful connection could simply be postponed indefinitely until it better suited their convenience. But here's the beautiful truth you need to embrace now. You don't need to wait for their awakening to find your peace. Your fulfillment doesn't require their recognition of these failures. Your happiness isn't contingent upon their eventual remorse. By the time their retrospection arrives, you will have already built a life rich with meaning, beyond your identity as their parent. You'll have cultivated friendships that sustain you, pursuits that fulfill you, and a relationship with yourself built on self-respect rather than external validation. When that day of realization comes, when they look back with the particular ache of time wasted, you won't meet them with bitterness or the cold satisfaction of, "I told you so." Instead, you'll meet them with the calm clarity of someone who refused to be defined by absence, someone who transformed abandonment into independence, someone who chose dignity over desperation. You'll have moved on, not from loving them, but from needing their attention to validate your worth. Remember this fundamental truth. You were complete before they arrived in your life. You remained complete throughout their childhood, even as parenthood consumed your identity. And you remain complete now, regardless of how they choose to see you. Their absence cannot diminish your wholeness unless you grant it that power. One day, they'll remember all they missed, and by then, you'll have remembered who you truly are.